Hello, welcome to Meet the Candidate with KADY TV. My name is Peter Godinez, and we have the lovely Dianne McKay here. And so Dianne, welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So the world wants to know who you are. And
The whole world.
I think so, at least I do.
Okay.
And so I think it would just be appropriate. What did you grow up in some of your background? Let's start off with that.
Well, I was born in Washington, D.C., so not in a state. I was born in the District of Columbia. I moved to California when I was 2, grew up until 1972 in the city of Orange, in Orange County, and then my dad got a job in the Valley, so we moved to Thousand Oaks in 1972. I was 12 and was just starting 7th grade in middle school, so I started middle school in the Canal Valley at Redwood and went to Thousand Oaks High School and graduated from Thousand Oaks High School.
This is interesting. Now, did you have grow up in a small family or?
I have one brother.
One brother?
One brother, so pretty small family, yeah.
Older or younger?
An older brother. He's 2 years older than me, so we're pretty close.
And you rule over him. You're in his head, so I'm sure he's quite a man. So
Yeah.
So growing up in Thousand Oaks, what were some of the positive experiences that you had during those time frames that you can remember?
Well, it was very small, 35,000 people, I think, when I moved there. I grew up in Lynn Ranch, right at the edge of open space, and we all had not fancy equestrian horses. We all had trail horses that we saved our money and bought, and I could literally get on my horse and ride right out to open space. I actually rode where my house is now, and most of my friends had horses, and so we'd get home from school and hop on our horses, and we'd rode bareback, much to my mom's chagrin. Sometimes we didn't wear shoes, and we would just, when it was hot outside, we could go riding, we could go down in the hill canyon and swim in the creek, and that was how we spent a lot of our time. It was when the sheep farmers were right there. The sheep would come into our yard and eat the grass, and so it was a pretty idyllic time to be in Thousand Oaks.
Is this something you still do, ride horses with no shoes on? Or?
No, I gave up. I would not ride bareback now, but I did give up riding at some point. Like most of the kids did once we got our driver's license, then we kind of drove to the beach and did that kind of stuff. Some of my friends rode, did the real equestrian thing, did barrel racing, and some rode English at Foxfield. But for me, it was a fun thing to do when I was in middle school, and then in high school, I worked and drove my car.
Were your parents real hands-on? And
my mom was a teacher.
Okay.
So she went to work every day, but she had the same vacations that we did. It was one of the reasons she wanted to be a teacher. She became a teacher when I was in 6th grade, and so that was kind of nice that she had summers off, like I had summers off, and I also got to watch her teach, and I used to volunteer in her classroom most of the way through high school. I worked in her classroom or one of the other teachers at her school. I would volunteer in their classrooms. So that was how I spent my afternoons.
So would you say your mom is probably the one person who had the most amount of impact at what I'm actually listening to and seeing right now?
The most amount of impact on how I feel about education. My dad was my kind of business head. I went to work for him when I was 16, when I could drive. He worked at a motorhome company in Chatsworth, and I worked full-time during breaks. When most kids, during spring break, I would work 40 hours during spring break, 9 to 5 for the 5 days that I had off. And in the summers, I worked 9 to 5 every day in a business, and I was a kid, but everybody else there was an adult, and so I kind of grew up in business in a very adult world.
Well, that's a really nice combination. Mom's a teacher, dad's a business person,
Yeah.
and you're kind of best of both worlds.
I like to think I got a little from both, yeah.
Oh my gosh. The experience with your parents, you said you were a cheerleader, so is that something they encouraged? Did you make up your own mind as to what you wanted to do?
I think it was something, even from when I was young, I think when I lived in Orange, one of the neighborhood girls was a cheerleader, and I just thought that would be really fun to do. And when I was in high school, it was done in a little more brutal way. We had to win a popularity contest to do that, so it took a while to kind of grow the guts. I moved here when I was 12, and a lot of friendships had already been established of people that had grown up in Thousand Oaks, so it took me a while to have the guts to actually do it, but it was something I always wanted, so I eventually tried out and was a cheerleader. It was fun.
A woman of courage. So after Thousand Oaks, did you get a chance to go on to higher learning? Somehow I know you worked, but did you get a chance to take any formal education?
I
after
did
high
work.
school?
I went up to Chico State and got my business degree from Chico State. I recommend it still. It's a great business school. And I actually served on their College of Business Advisory Board from 2001 to about 2007, 2008, something like that. I served on their board. It's a fabulous business school, and I really learned a lot there. They still have small class sizes, and I think it's a really good school.
Were some of your best friends that you keep in contact now, were they from high school or from the Chico experience?
I have both.
Really?
I have some of my closest friends are from both. I still am close friends with those that I know actually from Redwood that go all the way from 7th grade. The chief of police of Thousand Oaks, the new chief of police, Tim Hagel, he and I met in 7th grade. And the fire chief, actually, Ted Smith, I met in 7th grade. So we kind of, those of us that stayed have done well in Thousand Oaks. We like it there. And then I have my college roommate that I lived with in the dorms. She and I were texting yesterday about where her son's going to go to college and what I thought, and we're still really, really close. So, yeah, I have them from both.
It's pretty important to have close friends, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was harder, I think, for us. We didn't have Facebook. I watched my kids, and it's so much easier for them to stay in touch with a much broader group of friends. They know what they're all doing. I mean, long distance was expensive, and writing letters, we weren't really good at it. So it was hard. I mean, I've gotten back in touch with friends through Facebook that I kind of lost touch with, which is fun. I enjoy that. But the ones that I stayed in touch with all along are still the close core of my friends.
Wow.
I even have one friend since Orange. We grew up across the street from each other, and we've been friends for 50 years this year.
Wow, so I almost want to say, what would they say about you, but that'll be for another interview.
Yeah.
So usually I ask, what was your first job? But you were working ever since, you could actually walk fast.
Yeah.
But was it when you were 16 working for your dad?
No.
You always worked.
Before that, I did always work. As soon as I could babysit, I started babysitting. Okay. I always wanted to have my own money. I don't know why I was obsessed with that, but I always wanted to work. I babysat probably 7 nights a week when I was a teenager. Then when I was 15, I got a work permit and went to work at the Thousand Oaks roller rink, skating roller rink. Mm-hmm. That was, everybody remembers that, and I wore one of those clown shirts with all the different colors. The owners, Kay and Shannon Woodland, were really good to me. I still stay in touch with them. They live up in Grass Valley now, but they were really good to me. And I worked at the skating rink until I was 16, and then I went to work down at Sports Coach where my dad worked, and worked there.
I almost want to ask you, have you ever not worked, but I think I know the answer to that.
I pretty much am a worker. I like to work.
Well, you enjoy work, so what do they say? If it's not work, it's not work,
yeah.
That type of thing. So the term is kind of weird to me saying this, but right out of Chico, what was your first, real job?
My first real job was in the satellite television business. In 1979, satellites were, the downlink itself, the satellite antenna, was deregulated. And my dad was friends with an attorney that worked with Ted Turner on the Superstation, and through a confluence of events, actually while I was still in college, my dad started a company using satellite distribution for seminars and continuing education for lawyers. So I started learning about that at Chico. I actually had planned to go to Chico for a couple years and maybe transfer someplace else, but Chico has a large region it had to cover, so they had a microwave ITFS system and did a lot of distance learning at Chico. So it was a great place for me to stay, learn how that worked, because it was the system for which we were going to use in that business. And so I took lots of the classes that were being broadcast so I could see how the Q&A really worked in the classroom and how did it really translate. And so then I went directly to work in that business when I graduated. I think I took a day off on my way home, and then I went to work.
Did they start you at a vice president level? Or
no, as a matter of fact, I started as a secretary. It was just the beginning of the recession that, it started in 1981. I graduated in 1982. So even that my dad's company had been bought by Oak Industries, which was a very large communications company at the time. And so they had started downsizing, so I had to come in at an entry-level administrative assistant position and work my way up from there.
Now, did you transition next to another television media after that?
No, what happened is Oak didn't do so well throughout the recession, and they actually got into some real trouble with the SEC. So my dad and I eventually got out of that business and started another company. Kept the same clients, but had to start a company on our own, just the two of us. It was called Strategic Television. And I ran that with my dad until 1991 when he died, and then I ran it by myself until I sold it in 2004.
Wow.
So,
So I guess the natural progression is you went from media, and I know it, the seed was planted by your mom, who was an excellent teacher, but what waved their hand and said, Dianne, education over here, that you started heading that direction?
when my first child, well, I did parent participation preschool, which in the adult education program in Thousand Oaks has a parenting program, and it also provides preschool, but you participate in it. And so I started participating in the classroom, and I think it brings out some of the best parent volunteers because you learn early to play a part in your child's education. So I participated in that program with my first two children. Some of it was just guilt because I traveled so much with my job, and some of it was a great program. My mom recommended it. And then when they went to kindergarten and started school, with my mom, it wasn't are you going to go volunteer in the classroom? It's what are you going to do? So I just tried to do what I could. I worked on some technology grants with the principal and integrating technology in the classroom. It was really new then. Schools didn't have computers, and so we wrote some grants, got some computers in the classroom. Our first goal was just to get a computer in each upper grade classroom and then get a computer in each classroom. Now they're everywhere, but those were tougher times. It was expensive and it was hard to get that technology in place. And so that was the first thing that I did, and worked really hard. Started a booster club specifically to raise money for technology at my kids' elementary school. Parents were very supportive of it. They sent in money. You could see that's what they wanted us to do. Got involved in the PTA, and so did both the technology boosters and PTA, and worked really hard to raise funds for the schools. Then got involved district-wide. We went to pass a school bond. And so then, I was bid, so then I got involved in district-level things and worked on the bond program. It took us a couple times to get it passed, and then on the bond advisory committee, and from there to the district advisory committee, and yeah.
Wow. I'm just thinking of your kids. Were they saying, wow, Mom, you're really a hard act to follow? Tell me about some of
They
your things
didn't
about
want to be anywhere with me.
Well, tell me, if you're comfortable, tell me about your kids and what you think you passed on and their individuality. You're a great mom, sounds like. I would love to hear about that.
My kids are great. I have 4 of them. The older 2, probably, they never wanted to go to the grocery store with me. None of them do still, because I'll invariably get stopped. Someone has a question for me, whether it's about the K-12 education in the Conejo Valley or the community colleges or something. I was even on the traffic commission in the city of Thousand Oaks, so there's always somebody who wants to stop and talk to me about something. And so they would rather not go to the store with me. And they had me pick them up at the stop sign. And so I didn't go on campus to pick them up, because if I went on campus, they said it would take me 45 minutes to an hour to leave campus, because I would stop and talk to them.
You fell for that one too. Okay, I'm glad I'm not.
Yeah, I was gullible enough. Actually, I felt sorry for them, because there were a lot of times where they were standing there like this, waiting for me while I was talking to people at the elementary school, and they'd be like, "Can we walk home?" Anything. So.
So you passed down a lot of qualities, examples. It's one thing to, say to your kids, but you were actually doing it.
I think my kids will be great public servants. I think it's just part of them. They do get involved in, Danny's 28 years old almost, Carly's 26, Jackson's 19, and Bennett is 17, and they give back. It's just who they are. It's what they've seen, in our house. It's what we do, and they certainly believe in education. They know what it means to me. I always said to parents in the welcome back talks, if you can do anything, put in some time in your child's education. Even if you work all day, cut out the shamrocks for class, because your child will be so proud when they're doing the shamrock project, because they'll know that you participated in that. And I believe that at every grade, whether it's high school, if you're on the booster club of your child's athletic team, if you're there at the track meet doing timing and scoring, or on football boosters, or whatever it is, or PTA, or working on, any of the art programs, your kids know that. They know you're there. My kids always knew at any given chance I might be walking across their campus, and I don't know, it was fun to see them at school. I'm not sure they were always thrilled to see me, but it was good to see them.
I'm sure they were. I wonder if they ever came home and they said, their friends, well, how come you can't be like so-and-so's mom, That never came up then, because obviously you were in the public's eye.
Yeah, they never said that. I think they just wanted me, how they would get Sometimes they were a little jealous of my time. Gave away a lot of evenings to meetings and things like that, and a lot of telephone calls. And there were a couple times that kids would say, don't they know that you have kids of your own that, you need to spend time with, and don't they know that it's dinner time, or there were sometimes they resented the amount of time that I gave up, but not very often. That was just
Sounds like you balance it really nicely.
it was few, but it happened.
Well, I want to say that maybe you thought when you were 16, you said, I know my calling, I know something's turned on, but was there a time, like maybe just recently, you said, wow, I got to take myself to the next level because of all that's going on? Was there a time frame in the last, whatever years?
Wow, I don't know. When I sold my company, I went to Bob Fraser, who was the superintendent at the time, and I said, what can I do? I'll give you a year of my time, and tell me what I can do to help. And he said, I worked with Terry on the Schools Foundation. He said, I would really like to see that get going, and he gave us some office space in the district office. And I worked really hard on that and some other special projects for him that were kind of PR and media related. And that's how I met Scott Harris, who I work for now at Mustang Marketing, when I worked in that little world.
That's what I was thinking, Mr. Harris. I know
Yep.
Mr. Harris.
So.
No. So since you don't ride horses anymore, people probably want to know how you stay in such great shape. Do you a distance runner now with Steve? Do you do half
No,
marathons?
Steve would leave me in the dust.
Well, it's not a matter of leaving the dust, it's a matter of going doing it, but I'm sure the world would like to know the secrets in terms of how you maintain your health and everything.
The secret to my health is really good genes.
All right, okay.
I
All
would
right.
love to say I'm up exercising every day, but that would be a lie, and everybody knows it.
By the way, I'd rather look good than be good.
Yeah.
So you,
My son gave me yoga classes for Christmas, though, and I have been doing that.
and you continue to do that?
Since January, I've been practicing yoga, so
Are you thinking of
4
possibly
months into it.
instructing? Because that seems what happens, you kind of integrate into
I hope not.
participate.
I hope I don't find something new to do.
Well, you know what? This was just absolutely fascinating, and one of the things I want to give you the opportunity to is you are a trustees for Ventura Community College District. You want to tell us a little bit about your campaign or your re-election or your reappointment?
Well, I'm really excited. The last 4 years have not been easy. I was sworn in December, and in the beginning of February, we found out that Oxnard College and Ventura College had been placed on accreditation warning. We had to do further budget cuts. The first April meeting, we had to, sign 36 layoff notices. The next year, the colleges were put on further probation. They were put on further probation, went beyond warning, and all 3 colleges were put on probation. And we had to do more cuts, 130 layoffs, I think. It was devastating. It was not fun. And we worked really hard as a board and the district staff to get the colleges off probation where they needed to be to do all of that work. We've worked really hard with the employees to do the best for students in some really awful budget times. And now they're starting to get some growth fund back, and we have the Student Success Act, and we have some really positive things that we're working on. And I'd really like to do the positive now. I feel like we lived through the negative, and I did 4 years of really tough stuff. And I'm really excited we're looking at some dual enrollment programs. We're doing some great work with adult education. We're, and combining, making sure we're not duplicating services and not letting anyone fall through the cracks either. And I think that's really important work. We are looking at how do we compete with declining enrollment. We've seen declining enrollment come through K-12, and now we're getting less and less graduates. And how do we compete in that world and make sure that we keep our colleges growing and growing in a good way, making sure we have the classes that students need and that we're feeding the economic engine that's Ventura County and keeping jobs here and having the labor force to fill them. So that positive work that needs to be done, I'm really excited to do that.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing all that happen right before my eyes. So if you were to say, how would you describe yourself as kind of a last statement? What people maybe say about you?
I think I'm a really hard worker. I think that I work really hard to learn and know what I'm doing and try and use that knowledge to the best of my ability to get something done well.
Excellent. It was my honor to interview you, and you did fabulous. So
Thank you.
This is Meet the Candidate with Dianne McKay, who is running for Ventura County Community College District trustee.
Area 2.
Area 2. Always forget that,
Yeah.
Area 2. So thank you very much, Diane.
You're welcome.